Welcome to the special edition of Investor Ideas Podcast with a spotlight on the cannabis sector. Recently attending the Arcview Investor Forum at the Weston Bayshore in Vancouver, BC, we got to interview some of the most influential thought leaders in the sector. Over the next coming week, tune in to hear guests such as Troy Dayton from Arcview, Sean McCabe from Electrum Partners, and Mike Gorenstein from the first publicly traded NASDAQ cannabis company. And many more, including an exclusive interview with the startup winner from the forum. You will hear thoughts on emerging markets, key data from the US and Canada, and how tech plays a role in the cannabis sector and what it takes to become a success in this industry.
We're here with Troy Dayton, CEO and co-founder of the Arcview Group at the Investor Pitch Forum at the Weston Bayshore in Vancouver. First of all, congrats. There's a lot of enthusiasm in the atmosphere.
It's a really amazing time in the cannabis sector right now with what's happening, particularly in Canada, and then the arbitrage to the U.S. because of there's really lower valuations in the U.S. So there's just a very exciting time politically, and also a real key inflection point right now.
And on that note, with Canada being quite a hot market now in terms of cannabis, and like you say, what's going on in the U.S., with the next kind of 5 years, how do you see the market, and are any countries in particular in the forefront?
Yeah, well, I mean, this market's growing at about a 27% compound annual growth rate in North America. And so, it's about a $10 billion market today, growing to about a $24 billion market. And most of that is not from new laws that are changing, right? This is from laws that have already changed. So when you start looking at what's going to change in the next few years, you will see that impact the market, out into 22, 23, 24. And then when you look at the global market, we're looking at predicting that it's about a $57 billion market in the next, legal market in the next 10 years.
Right.
And so it's going to move a little slower, but when it changes, you don't have the state-federal conflict. So what's happening in Germany right now is very interesting because they're going to have medical covered by insurance. Cannabis is actually going to be competing on the same playing field as pharmaceuticals. So that's going to be very interesting. Across the world, we're seeing interesting things happening. Colombia, South America, there's a lot of different countries that are moving in this direction, and those are some really amazing markets. Israel, the research that's coming out of Israel is incredible. And there's like some surprising countries. I mean, Eastern Europe, man, those countries are starting to pop pretty quick. And we hear about things like once they start seeing all these countries, developing resources and taxes and jobs and all this, they're just going to fall like dominoes.
Now, there's also a lot of public companies utilizing tech in the cannabis space. What can you tell us about what you've seen in regards to tech?
I think, there's the old saying about the picks and shovels during the gold rush, that it wasn't so much the gold rush folks that made the money.
Yeah.
It's the people that did the picks and the shovels and the jeans and all of that. I think the same thing's going to be true here. In the end, I don't think people that grow cannabis are going to be the big winners. Right now, that's the case because there's limited licensing and there's a lot. But eventually, this becomes a commodity, and you don't hear about the great hop growers, or you hear about beer, right? And then there's also all of these ancillary products and services. So I think AgTech is a huge opportunity, mainly because anything that's developed for cannabis can probably be used beyond cannabis, but because cannabis has such a big profit margin, and because there's so much regulation and there's so much of value that comes from increasing yield or increasing things, I think the technology around microbial additives, technology around genetics, technology around testing, this whole, and biopharma, that whole world of technology is not just innovating for cannabis, but it's innovating for agriculture and science more broadly. But it'll be first applied in cannabis. And it's exciting to be able to lead in that way. And then also I feel like there's a lot of technology around sort of automating cultivation facilities and getting a lot more visibility through sensors and things like that, which will reduce the cost of labor. And the race is really on because there's a falling price, wholesale price of cannabis that's just going to continue. And it's going to be these farming technological innovations and genetic innovations that are going to help really drive that. And the people that can deploy those technologies are going to really have an outsized opportunity.
Now, you also mentioned earlier today that Arcview has completed a new report. What are the sort of main takeaways for investors from the report?
Well, you'll have to buy it to find that out. No, I'm just kidding. So this is our 6th edition of the State of Legal Marijuana Markets.
Right.
So we've been putting out these market reports for over 6 years now with the data, and this will be our biggest one yet. It goes, in particular, really deep into the world markets and gets into each of the top countries that are likely to have decent-sized markets sometime soon or currently do, and looks at the import and export opportunities, goes state by state and looks at the different regulations and where the opportunities are. So for example, in a state that has wide open licensing, the real opportunity is going to be in brands. So we spend a lot of time looking at brands and looking at what current consumers are purchasing, because there's new product categories getting started every day, and the real money is going to be made in consumer packaged goods in this sector, but that's filled with peril, right? We also are going to be covering a lot about what's happening in the investment climate and what's happening with valuations and due diligence and just a rapid maturation of the market. And we're doing that based on millions and millions of data points through point of sale data. And so now that we have more data, the last year has marked a really significant increase in our ability to capture data in this market, and yet another year of data to be able to really look at. And so that makes us so much more able to create a more robust and actionable insights.
And so bringing it all together with all the change we've seen in the space, would it be fair to say that this report is quite a milestone?
Absolutely. It's going to be our biggest report. It's going to have the most information in it, and it's happening at a very unique inflection point. So I think, that then again, in a few months after we put it out, it'll be old. That's why when people buy it, they also get like a 6-month update. So, and we'll do a real update to what's changed 6 months later without necessarily doing the whole big. This is going to be a 300-plus page report. Get digital access. You'll be able to download the charts and stuff to use. And a lot of people that would buy this would want to use charts in their presentations and things like that. So we give you the ability to download those charts in a digital form to be able to use them in presentations and things like that. It's. I think if you're going to be making expensive decisions in this sector, you deserve to have access to the best information. In the end, probably saves you a lot of money.
All right, Troy Dayton, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
InvestorIdeas.com reminds all listeners to read our disclaimers and disclosures on the InvestorIdeas.com website. All investment involves risk, and this podcast is not meant to be an endorsement to buy or sell securities or products. To hear more podcasts, you can go to www.investorideas.com/audio. And a reminder, you can also hear our podcasts on iTunes, Google Play Music, iHeart.com, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spreaker, and SoundCloud.